Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Dis Affamie History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past, what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you.
Welcome to Dis Affamie History Podcast with your host, Wendy Aris. In today's episode, we're joined by the inspiring Tami Dee Garcia, a cultural heritage reconnection coach, author, and speaker. Tami's journey is living proof that reclaiming your cultural identity is never a simple or linear path. She shares her powerful story of navigating Dominican and Jamaican roots she wasn't raised in, raising an Ethiopian daughter across cultures, and building a life outside the United States. With over 30 years of experience in cultural education, program development, non-profit leadership, and business consulting, Tami now dedicates her work to guiding others through cultural heritage reconnection, identity, and belonging. So settle in and join us for an inspiring and heartfelt conversation about the importance of reconnecting with our roots, preserving cultural heritage, and embracing the fullness of identity across generations.
Thank you, Miss Tami Garcia, for coming on to the podcast, Dis Affamie History, to talk about your journey in genealogy as well as, your family history. So before we start, I'll just have you just do a brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. So I always like to just start with a little story to tell about myself as a storyteller. So as you said, my name is Tami Garcia, and my family is from Jamaica and the Dominican Republic and many of those little islands up in there. I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And so like many immigrant families, my family was just focused on survival and chasing that, American dream. And so they were just too busy and they didn't really go through the traditions. I wasn't raised with any specific traditions. And so as a result, I never felt like I was enough of anything. I never felt Black enough, Jamaican enough, Dominican enough, Latino. I never felt enough of anything. I don't know. Do you remember that show Blackish?
Yes.
That was kind of me. I just felt ish all the time, kind of ish for everything. And, the kids would laugh at me for being a Garcia who couldn't speak Spanish, and don't even ask me about patois. I couldn't do any of it. So they always told me that I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And I just really was trying to be who I was, but I didn't know how to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I vowed that I would never raise my children the way that I was raised, disconnected. And then I ended up going to college. I went to Howard University. Mm-hmm. So that's my second greatest love next to my daughter. She's my first. Mm-hmm. And so I was just surrounded by people, who embraced their identities. So I decided it was time for me to explore mine. And so the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn and the more confident I became. And then I adopted my daughter from Ethiopia. And I made a promise to her and her country and her family that I would help her stay connected to her heritage. But I realized it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. Even being in a city like Washington, D.C., that has the largest population of Ethiopians outside of Ethiopia, it just was difficult. And I would ask my Ethiopian friends, how do I do certain things and how do I connect? And my friends were like, I don't know. When you figure it out, let us know. And I realized that they were having the same challenges, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just was like, this really shouldn't be that hard. And so that's how I ended up on that whole path of reconnection because it shouldn't be that hard. And I didn't want others to feel the same way that I did.
Yeah, no, definitely. You brought up a lot of themes there that I can relate to growing up here in Canada. So what would you describe, I guess, as your heritage is waiting to be claimed? Like that's what you described. Can you kind of unpack that philosophy for the listeners?
Yeah. So for me, the foundation and the work that I do comes from your heritage is yours, right? And so no matter how big or how small it is, no matter how much or how little you know about it, it's yours and it can't be taken away. So that's the foundation for me. And kind of as I tell people, that's like the hill that I'm going to die on, is that that's just what I believe. And I just say that over and over again. Your heritage is not something that you have to earn. There's no test that you have to pass, right?
Mhm.
There's nobody that's going to come out and give you this magic cape that for wearing your heritage. It's your birthright. And so, no one questions if someone has left you property or money, right? So great grandparent or another ancestor, if they've left this to you. But for some reason, we question our identity and where we come from. So for me, that's very odd. And so that's why I say that it is, if you hear me say like reconnection, I use the word reconnection instead of connection, because the connection assumes that it's something we've always had.
Yeah.
And for many of us, that's not true, right?
Mhm.
But reconnection is intentional. And it says, like, we're not searching for anything brand new. It's not, it's always been ours. But the reconnection means like we're going back home, right? There's nothing that we have to do. We're just reclaiming it and, going back to it. So that's why I say that.
No, and a great way to describe it as well. And so, what then led you to write the Rediscovering Your Roots, and who was it written for?
Yeah. So my book, it's really for anyone that's felt not enough or kind of in between. So those people that are adopted or mixed heritage or just have been disconnected from their traditions and raised away from our heritage lands, right? And it's also for parents and for those people who want to support someone on their journey of their heritage reconnection. Because with, so many mixed families with different ethnicities and races and things like that, your child may have a different background from yours, and you don't know how to connect. That other parent may not be there, or the parent may just simply not know, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote it because I remember what it felt like to be desperate
Mhm.
to understand who I was, right? There was no one there to guide me. There was nothing there. When I started doing this, it was back when it was the dial-up AOL, right? So there was none of this, and I needed direction and support, but it wasn't there.
Mhm.
And then when I adopted my daughter and tried to navigate that, I realized that there still wasn't anything there. So I just really want people to know that no matter where they're starting from, whether they feel completely disconnected or they're just beginning, or maybe they know things, but they want to go deeper, that they can do that. And this guide will help them start that process to do that. So I just really created something that I needed that wasn't there and that still isn't there.
No, and that's great. And I guess it might go into, I guess, these other questions of, what are the, I guess, the common feelings or questions that come up for people about identity and belonging that have been posed to you?
Yeah. So let's talk about feelings, because I think most
Mhm.
people can relate to the feelings more than the questions. So I get all kind of questions, right? But the feelings people bring me are like doubt.
Mm.
You know, am I enough? Can I claim this? That's where that cultural imposter syndrome comes up, right? And so they just feel completely overwhelmed. They don't know where to start or what to do. Then there's a lot of guilt around why can't I speak the language or why don't I know more, right? I should have gone down this journey sooner and given this information to my kids. My kids are even more lost than I am. So they feel a whole bunch of guilt around that. And then there's just like fear. People are afraid, right? Want to be judged? Are you going to be judged by, people within the cultural spaces, with your family, outside of like, why are you doing that? That was a million years ago. You don't need to do that. You're just whatever you are, right? And so people fear that because anything different, right? People fear. And then there's just, like I said, I was desperate, and there was a lot of people just have this desperation and this longing for wanting to know about their grandparents or other ancestors. Like, where did I come from? I really want to belong and connect to that, right?
Yeah.
So there's just a plethora of feelings that people are having, and it's so complex. So my desire is for people to be unapologetically proud of who they are and reclaiming that and letting go of the shame and all the fear and all the questions and replacing it, right, with
Mhm.
hope and, pride or those and all those things that are part of that.
And one question I just want to ask you is, do you find that people have any type of hurt with that as well in terms of the feelings that come through?
Yeah, yeah, definitely a lot of hurt. I've had hurt. You have that hurt because you think about, why didn't your family feel like it was important enough to share this? Maybe they knew some of the information, but they didn't share it. Or they've seen how you've struggled and maybe even talked about it or tried to go down the path, but they still withheld that information from you.
Mhm.
For me, it was hurt and anger
Yes, yes.
because it- I growing up, I always had an interest in architecture and design. And there was never anyone there to give me support. I tried to participate in architecture clubs in school, but it just didn't work out for different reasons. And no one in my family thought anything of it. So when it was time for me to go to college, all of their advice was like, be in business, get a degree in business. I really didn't care much about business, but I didn't know anything else to do. So I went down that path, and then I got an MBA and I did all the business things. It's never been a great love, but it's what I did, what I was told to do, right? They tell you what to do and you do it.
Mhm.
And then after business school, out working, and one day my aunt says to me, "Hey, did you know your great grandfather, my grandfather, was a big architect from Spain?"
Mm.
What? Did no one think
Yes.
it was important enough to tell me about him? Oh, yeah, he was this architect, and then they sent him to Dominican Republic to build, to build structures, and that's where he met, his wife, and then had my father, all of those things, and he died by falling off of a building, but he was, like, pretty renowned and, like, so matter of fact, like it wasn't a big deal.
Mhm.
Said to her, I said, "Did no one think to tell me this?" Because you saw me struggling and always talking about design and architecture, and
Right.
I had that conversation. No one told me that. If someone had shared the stories with me, I would have known that this wasn't a fluke, right? It was in my DNA, and it was okay for me to do this, but no one did. So I'm even still a little bitter today.
Yeah. No, definitely understandable, and that I can definitely relate in terms of, just uncovering and peeling back what people did and wondering why I had these, interest in things that nobody around me had interest in. And then to know that, previous family members were a part of that. So it
Yeah.
just, and I guess in a way, it, I kind of relate it back to kind of a hurt, kind of a shame of not knowing, and then not knowing how to support the person that, brings up or has all of these different types of interests and that connection to somebody else that might have had that same type of interest as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess then, how do you then, what tools or exercises that in your work, help people with reconnecting with heritage the most?
The most. I use a number of tools and exercises to help people. And it really varies from the situation that I'm in, which I use. However, there are 4 core tools that I use that I really love that I created. The first one is called a cultural heritage snapshot. And so what this snapshot is, if you think about it, it's a picture of where you are today. So this is your baseline of what you know right now. I don't believe in starting from a negative point of view. I've, studied like the whole like appreciative inquiry aspects. And so I like to start from a place of positivity. So what is it that you know? And let's build off of that. So, and what you really find is that when you start from that point, it also takes away the fear from people. Instead of talking about, oh, you lost this, you don't know this, blah, 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 well, you don't know, check off what you don't know. Or no, let's figure out what you do know and build from that. And whether people were raised in it or they're just trying to figure something out about it, like through DNA tests or something, they often find that they really know more than they thought they did because it starts from, what you know, what you want to learn, your desires, things like that. And then from that point, there's an exploration journal. And so this is a space, these templates to capture your journey as you're going through it. And not just the lessons, the information, the data, also your feelings, right? Once you've learned these things, how are you feeling about this? And what does this bring up for you? Or any changes? How do you want to, do things? And from within that, as you're learning, it's how do you want to incorporate this into your life? And I often tell people that heritage is really a fusion, right? I call it heritage fusion, right? It's a mashup of different things. It's like your background and what your ancestors have left you, but it's also what you live on a day-to-day basis. So I encourage people to incorporate all of that in a way that they can live today. So my daughter is from Ethiopia, and I often call our family grits, plantain, and Dorowat. So we have this African American side and the Caribbean and then the Ethiopian. So all of our traditions and things that we do, they're kind of mashed together. We'll celebrate the days, but we bring different pieces of our backgrounds into it and appreciate it. So whether it's the music or the food or the art or anything, we put it all together and start. And so that's why I tell people, this is your life. So pick what works for you. You don't have to celebrate everything. You don't have to know everything. It's just really no way to do that. And most people who even live within a culture in the country, they don't even know everything, right? So I encourage people to do what works for them, because then that's how it becomes a part of their daily life, and they start to live it and feel more a part of it.
Yeah.
And then there's a Heritage Connection Pledge, which I love because it's this personal commitment that you're making to honor and to reconnect with your heritage. And again, it's in a way that works for you. But I created this pledge because I found that, when you have to sign something, you're more intentional about it. So when you're intentional about thinking how you want to incorporate these things, what this means to you, and all the steps around it, and then you're signing it, forces you to think about it and be a bit more intentional. So whether you're doing it for yourself or a child, it's there, and it makes you think about it a bit more. And I tell people that they should frame it or put it up, because it's a nice reminder, because we don't want to create something that you're going to put in a binder, put it on a shelf, and never look at it again. However, the fourth part of it is the cultural legacy plan. And that part we do put in a binder.
Yeah.
But it's a little different, because I want you to think about, what are those pieces, those artifacts, photos, the sayings, or just the wisdom that you want your family to remember, the stories. So they have to be captured, right? And so the plan for, okay, all of these things that we've learned, we don't want our family to go back to where we were before the confusion. And we want them they'll build their own traditions and add to this, but let's capture what we know, what we want to carry on, and that. So those are the four larger pieces of that.
No, that's fabulous. And especially where you mentioned about intention, because I think that's where it really gels and glues in for all of this. And then, of course, for you with, how do families, I guess, with oral stories and family narratives in the sessions with this, especially to support healing and identity reclamation, how do you piece those together?
So explain a little more about what you're saying. How do I piece them together?
So just like how, like, I guess with family of stories, these are the traditions that are passed down from one generation to another. How do you use those? Or if there has been not necessarily those family history stories being passed down, other family narratives that have been heard or passed or said in passing, how do you help the person or assist the person in this, I guess, this healing and the identity process?
Right. So I think giving them the space to figure this out and to share their stories, that's healing in of itself. And then being able to write them down and capture them, that's healing. And so many people only have small pieces of their history. So what we do is we take those pieces and look for ways to build on that.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is creating an app, a platform that incorporates technology to help do that. So for instance, someone has a photo, and in this photo, there's picture of people, and you might not even know who these people are, but by using technology, it can point out and say, okay, well, this furniture is from this time frame of here. And we know, because if you know any stories of your family or anything, it can tell you this is probably why this was here and what was going on in the country at this time. And so from the little pieces, we began to put together a bigger narrative for the family. And that helps to answer a lot of questions that people have. And then from those pieces that we put together and we have the information on that person, we're able to say, well, knowing these pieces and what this means and how it connects to wherever you're from, and this is who you are, this is how these pieces connect together. Like when I was telling a story about for me, that's how that connected. I learned about, I did the DNA for African ancestry and learned that, and my family comes from like 4 different countries, which is kind of unique. But one of them is a Fulani. And so the Fulani are a nomadic tribe. And learning that about being nomadic and all the pieces behind it, it helped me understand why I'm nomadic.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I was able, to put those pieces together for myself. So that's how it's really about helping people pull all those pieces together. When I had a book reading, and at my very first book reading, people started talking and people just started sharing stories. And people were crying and laughing and just thinking. Everybody was just listening to these others. And you just felt how the room shifted and it became this healing space. And it was at that point that I realized this book this guy that I didn't know was going to happen, that was just this guy, but that it was larger than that, right? It's helping people to heal. And in that room, people were asking for more opportunities to come together to share their stories because they had not had that before. And it was beyond one group. It was just and it was many different diasporas that were there. And so that was very interesting.
And I mean, I always find it that, especially with healing, that you don't know what is going to open up and you don't know what's going to flow
Yeah.
from it. It's always one of those unexpected things. So, but
Mhm.
I know throughout this conversation, you've talked about your daughter that you've adopted from Ethiopia. Could you be able to, I guess, talk to, I guess, with the, across the culture as well, embracing your Dominican and Jamaican roots, how has the, that journey of enriching your own understanding of identity?
It's made me more intentional. It's made me much more focused on, if I'm expecting her or I want her to connect with her roots and to be proud of who she is, I had to realize that even though I connected with them, I needed to live it even more so. But not just mine, I also needed to live hers as well and to understand hers and to be a part of it. And from moving to now, I live in Mexico. So we left DC. We've been in Mexico for 4 years and we're planning to leave next year to spend some time in Ethiopia, perhaps Rwanda, and finally settle in somewhere in Europe, probably Portugal. But I was intentional about leaving because in doing this work, I wanted to have a more, I guess, authentic view, if you will, of not just this work from third generation, immigrant, raising a first generation immigrant,
Yes.
but I wanted just to see what other experiences would be like and how that would affect how I'm maintaining my connection and doing the same for her. And it's also showed me that no matter where you are, people love their identities, their roots and their cultures, and people just want to belong, and they want to belong to where they come from. So in this space in Mexico, I'm able to see the different groups.
Mhm.
And be a part of different groups. I'm a part of Jamaicans in Mexico. So it's the association, and they just launched a couple months, in Mexico City at the consulate there, and we just started having meetings and everything. And so it's just like really great. There are like 100 members in it now. But for me, I'm like, wow, I can leave the US and still be a part of it. And it's affirming for me because I'm accepted. Like, no matter where I go, as I always tell people, like, this is your birthright. And I was a little hesitant by entering the space. And I asked if I could enter and
Yes.
explain my background. And they were like, absolutely. They were very welcoming, and it was like no big deal. But also here, there are a lot of they're African Americans, people from other Caribbean islands, from Europe, Black Europeans. And we're here starting a community here and very intentional about that space because this is where people live now. And so we're immigrants now here starting over. So it's been very interesting to see how that is happening, how new community and new traditions and things are being formed. And so it's helped me to see that, but to also be intentional. Again, intentionality is a big word, but be intentional about, my background and my daughter's background.
Yes, no, absolutely. And community is great, and to be able to connect with people. So for you, what feedback or stories of transformation have deeply moved you that you could be able to share?
Yeah. There's one that it's moved me. I guess it's my favorite one that stays with me. And it was one of actually my first, but it's just really touched me the most from when I started doing this work years ago. So we were working in a school and delivering, cultural curriculum to kids and having them share all their different backgrounds and traditions and things with each other. So we were leading that. And there was she happened to be Ethiopian, this one little girl, and she was just always so sad and despondent. And I didn't understand why, because I know the history and the background. I'm like, it's such a rich history, right? And she was in DC, so I was just wondering why she was so despondent. So I asked her, what's wrong? And she said that she was embarrassed. She was about 10. So she was embarrassed because she couldn't share anything. She didn't know anything about her culture. And she said she wanted to know, but her parents were too busy to share. So, yeah, sure, she ate the foods, but she couldn't speak the language. She didn't know any of the traditions. She had never been to Ethiopia, even though her parents were born there. And she was really sad. So, as I started working with her and giving her little activities to do and to interview people and just to start learning and sharing, it was like when I first started connecting, right? The more she learned, the more she wanted to learn, and the happier she became. And she just did a 180 shift because she could begin to talk about it and share it. And so she was actually living it. And it touched me so much because she was so sad, and then she just became this happy little girl. But not only that, her father came to the school and talked to me and thanked me for helping her and saying that she was so happy and so excited now. And he and his wife realized what they weren't doing because of all their busyness. And so now they were more focused and being intentional on sharing their culture with her. So I just love that because that little change in her and at such a young age, that's going to affect her whole life. And it was just so wonderful to see.
Yeah, no, it definitely would have, and of course, I'm sure it would have grounded her even more so in her identity. So, would you be able to share, I guess, any of your new or upcoming projects, books or retreats or community offerings that you have ongoing or starting?
Yeah, I'm so excited to share that I'm launching a membership community called the Cultural Roots Reconnection Club. So I'm doing that because while I have the book,
Mhm.
it's still l- living your culture or putting all this together for people who have not done it. And one of the big questions that I have is, where do I start?
Yeah.
How do I begin? And they're afraid to do it. So people need to do this work in community. Not everybody, but a lot of people do need to do this work in community and see that they're not alone. And how do I start living this every day? So this club will help take those people from feeling disconnected and unsure to confidently being able to live their heritage every day, and then having a group of people that they can kinda do life with.
Yes.
And when they come upon situations as they're working on this, there are other people that they can talk to, because when someone has comes from your same perspective,
Hmm.
it's easier, for you and to talk to them. So, the reconnection really isn't about the information, although they'll receive lots of great information and opportunities within the community, but it's about that group, the community, and doing things together. So
Absolutely.
that will begin in October.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll make sure to put the
Yeah,
link to that in the show notes so
yeah,
people can be able to connect with that. And so, what do you see as the future of heritage reconnection work and where people can plug in moving forward, in addition to what you have going on
right.
now?
So with the advent of, technology and AI and growing every day, I see that the heritage work that I do, the reconnection work, that more technology is going to be incorporated. And I'm actually working on some of the things myself, incorporating technology within it. So people that are within the community, they'll have a first opportunity to use those tools as well. But for technology, there'll be more storytelling, and people are talking about it more now. Everywhere, if you movies or TV shows, Instagram, you see people talking about being, disconnected or not having access to it, or people sharing their culture all across for people. So there'll be more of that, and then definitely the community. So that's where I see that things are going.
Okay, no, thank you so much. And, Tammy, as we come to a close, what do you hope listeners take away from your message of identity first heritage work?
Like I said, it's this hill I'm gonna die on, is that your heritage is yours, right? No matter how much you know, how little you know, no matter how big your DNA is or how little your DNA is, it's yours. It is a gift from your ancestors. So step up to claim it. Start small, but just start. Now that's it. Just start. It's yours for the taking.
No, thank you so much for this. This has been a very enlightening conversation to be had on this, and to know that, it's more than just, words or saying, but it is our identity for people to reclaim and to acknowledge. So thank you so much for your time.
It is. Thank you.
Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you.